Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mass MAGA podcast, Season 1, Episode 3. We have a terrific interview today with Chainsaw Sue O'Sullivan, who's going to highlight a lot of her great efforts for MAGA here in Massachusetts. Before we get to that interview, quick update from last month's podcast interview with Steve Semple. I attended a terrific election integrity training hosted by Julie Hall and Kathy Lynch, provided some great insights into that important subject. If you go to massmaga.com, you'll see links to the Mass GOP Election Integrity webpage and the Facebook group as well. Also, there's a really important election coming up on May 17th in the town of Hanson. Several different candidates spoke in Hanson recently. Glenn DeGravio and Steve Kloutman are running for re-election to the school committee. Ed Heel is running for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. Justin Robertson is running for the planning board. There were some great speeches by Jeff Deal and state representatives David DeCoste and Ken Sweezy. So again, Town of Hanson, May 17th election. More information, you can go to the Hanson RTC, and there'll be also information on the Mass MAGA website. Enjoy the interview. Hi, everybody. This is David Lopez, host of the Mass MAGA podcast. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is Season 1, Episode 3. We have a very special guest by the name of Chainsaw Sue O'Sullivan. Sue's going to give her own background in just a moment, but she's a state committee woman, and she's done a ton of work with RTCs as well as Precinct Strategy as well. So welcome, Sue. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Great, great. So, Sue, why don't you give us a quick overview of your background, and we're going to cover some of the great efforts that you're putting forth here in Massachusetts.
Sure. I moved here from England in 1986. Was never into politics, didn't like politicians. I never bothered getting my citizenship, kept renewing my green card. And then Trump got elected in 2016, and I felt like the world went mad. And all of a sudden, I realized the difference. I couldn't even tell you the difference between a Republican and a Democrat prior to 2016. But then I saw what was happening. And I wanted to get involved. So I went ahead and started applying for my citizenship. I got it in October of 2018. Obviously, voted all red in November of 2018. And then when 2020 came around, and they stole the election, I got a hold of the Mass GOP and I said, there's got to be more that I can do. Voting obviously is not working here. And they pretty much sent me a donate button. What they should have told me was about the Precinct Strategy and how that works. In January of 2021, I watched an episode of The War Room, and there was Dan Schultz on there, and he was describing what I was looking for. So I reached out to him. He wasn't sure how the Mass GOP worked. And so I started looking into exactly what the tiers are, and realized that actually my town should have an RTC, and we didn't have one.
And what town was that?
Royalston.
Okay.
So I got together with some friends and we started our own RTC. And then other friends were reaching out to me to see what they can do. And I was starting other RTCs. And before you know it, I got a hold of Dan and said, hey, it's going really well here in Mass. And he started sending me all the people that were contacting him through the Precinct Strategy website. And it just snowballed from there. So far, I've started 65 Republican town committees, added over 2,500 Republicans to the actual voting rolls as Republicans. And it's going great guns. I'm loving it. So then my next step, because with the 40 districts, state rep districts in Massachusetts, how it works is the Mass GOP has one man and one woman to represent those districts. And I soon found out that the man and the woman that we had in our district wasn't doing anything. In fact, the gentleman, Jay Flightman, told me in a meeting one day that he didn't think the RTCs were important. So that was my first glimpse into exactly what was going on with the Mass GOP. They didn't want the people involved. So I ran for state committee woman against his wife, and my friend Chris Ryan, him and I got together and we both ran for the state committee seat, and we both won in 2024. So now we're both on the Mass GOP, and hopefully we can turn the Mass GOP from its not very good working rhino club, part of the Uniparty, into a MAGA base for Massachusetts. And we can get strong Republicans represented, here in Mass, because what we have is not working. And we need to get more people involved. And that means running for something, running for town council or school board, whatever. I help everybody. We had 2 people in the last election run for school board, and those people got on. The election prior to that, I had 2 other candidates that I ran for school board. So it's just a case of finding these people willing to run and helping them out.
Excellent. Great. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. First of all, with regard to the RTC and RCCs that are out there, I mean, how do you see their function? Like if you were to describe a perfect model of an RTC, RCC, what should they be doing? What activities, what influence should they have?
Well, really identifying candidates in their towns. That's the biggest thing, I think. Reaching out to the public, growing your RTC, getting more people involved, telling the public exactly what an RTC does. We meet once a month. We have agendas, like if we have an upcoming election, we pinpoint possible people to run. And then we just assist them. We help them in fundraising. We help get their name out there. And it's going really well in Mass. I mean, the 65 brand new RTCs that are still going in just a couple of years. It's pretty amazing. We've got a lot of really good candidates that are going to be on the ticket in 2026. So
awesome. That's great. And so I think everybody's kind of geared toward 2026 at this point. Obviously, we have municipal elections. This episode is going to drop in early May. But basically, we have elections coming up, now pretty much
right.
municipally, and then also in the fall as well. So
right.
Now in your district, so we're going to talk about your work as a state committee woman, as we go forward, but maybe tell us a little bit about your district in terms of the RTCs. Are there any open spaces?
There's loads. There's lots of open spaces.
And I guess
we still need a lot of RTCs. My district is one of the largest. It's got 26 towns and cities inside it. It goes all the way from the corner of Winchendon all the way out to Bernardston, and then down to Northampton. So it's a really large area.
Okay.
I believe at this time we only have 9 or 10 of the towns organized. The most difficult thing I find in organizing them is having people like-minded like us switching from independent to Republican because they don't like the Mass GOP. Right. That's the most difficult thing to do is having them put that IR after their name in Massachusetts is really difficult. Okay. So, I tell people, you just got to hold your nose. It's going to be a fight. You know what we're in the fight for. So just hold your nose and do it. And then, because we're strength in numbers. Right. And the independents, there's so many independents in Massachusetts. And most of the people that I talk to are, if they're an independent, they do lean to the right. because the Democrats are just Democrats. So,
so tell me, like, so in your district, just out of curiosity, like, so we're trying to promote individuals that are really kind of getting their hands dirty and stepping up. In your district, who are the superstars? Like, anyone stand out, whether it's an RTC chair or other individuals that are just, role models for everybody else?
the Winchendon RTC is very good. They're very involved. They hold a lot of meetings. They do a lot of standouts for candidates, that kind of thing. They're quite a large group. They're involved a lot in election security. The other one that stands out is Greenfield. Greenfield has a very strong RCC, even though they call themselves an RTC, even though it's supposed to be a city. It's defined as an RTC. They're very strong. They do a lot of outreach to the community. They do a lot of hosting of candidates nights and that kind of thing. Orange RTC, that's another one that's becoming very strong. My friend Leslie runs the Orange RTC. I haven't been able to keep the Athol RTC going, which is right next to me. I've reorganized that now twice, and it's fallen apart again. The problem I find is that we find candidates that want to run for office, and they start the RTC as a leg up. And then after they get into office, they drop the RTC, which is what my state rep did. That's how she got into office. She started the RTC, put herself out there as a conservative, got all the conservatives behind her because she was the chair of the RTC in Athol.
Right.
And then as soon as she got to Beacon Hill, she votes 75% with the Democrats. So, I've seen many candidates across the state do the exact same thing. It's the uniparty. These people get into office and they lose their backbone. I don't know what happens when they get there, but I hope to find out in 26.
Nice. That's excellent. So one last question on the RTCs, like, what advice would you give to somebody that's in a city or town that doesn't have one at this point, but they're maybe listening to this or they're talking to their friends out there? Can they do it on their own? Should they be reaching out to state committee men and women?
They really should be reaching out to state committee men and women. Those are the people responsible in their districts. If they don't know who they are, they can reach out to me. If they don't hear back from their state committee man or woman, then reach out to me because I can get involved. There's a lot of state committee men and women that do a good job. But unfortunately, there's a lot of them that don't, and they want to keep the people out. They don't want to teach the public how RTCs work, how the Mass GOP actually works. And it's sad, but with more people getting in the fight, we need more people to run for Mass GOP. It happens in every March of a presidential election. That's when we get voted in. And we just need more people with backbone to step up.
Gotcha. So thanks for all that. I mean, I think there's hope for the RTCs and RCCs. I think the potential is huge. So thank you for
definitely
great work you're doing. So let's transition now to the precinct strategy aspect of your work. Now, tell us a little bit about that. And are you the Mass chapter representative? So just give us the info on that.
Yeah, so anybody that wants to get involved, go to precinctstrategy.com. That's Dan Short's website. And there's so much information on there. There's little short videos on exactly how the parties are structured. They're different from state to state. Honestly, I think they do that on purpose to confuse people. But Dan has, I believe now, nearly every state covered with somebody like myself, where if somebody emails Dan, then he forwards it on to me, and then I work with those individuals. I think he just found somebody in New Hampshire. We've been trying to get New Hampshire going for a while. But so whenever somebody reaches out to Dan, or even Steve Stern down in Florida. Steve Stern kind of runs the East Coast and Dan runs the West Coast. Then he forwards all those people to me. And that's my hour commute at night. I talk to these people on the phone and find out what they're interested in, and help build them their community and their RTCs.
Excellent. So that sounds like a great organization that's really helping people at the local level.
Right,
And that's the key to everything. I mean, we can talk about the governor and, all these different levels, but the action, as you mentioned earlier, is at the select board level, finance committee, education committee, economic development, and even below that are opportunities to volunteer, almost
right.
like building a bench. I think we talked about that offline. And if we can get people excited just to volunteer at their local city or town, they're going to get a taste of it and hopefully move up from there. And it
Yeah,
sounds like that organization helps with that a little bit.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's a big identifier to find these people in the community. When we hold registration signings at local fairs and that kind of stuff, a lot of people don't even know what an RTC is.
Right. I
Um,
didn't know. Yeah.
and once they find out, and they find out that their town doesn't have one, they get excited to start their own RTC. We do them like the Franklin County Fair. We've signed a lot of people up through that. Greenfield runs that, do a great job of that. There's a lot of opportunities out there for people to get involved. It's just a case of getting out in the community and letting them know what's available.
Gotcha. So you've been doing this now for, let's say since 2020-ish, like somewhere in that range you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, like January of 2021 is when I saw Dan on the War Room.
Yeah.
I myself was on the War Room, and I've just been rolling ever since. I mean, I still hate politics and I still hate politicians. I think they're ruining this country. But I'm in it to win it. I love this country so much, and it's given me such a great life. I've got 2 kids, I've got grandkids, and I want them to live the American dream that I've lived. And right now, with the politicians that we have, it's not possible. It's not possible. They're wasting taxpayer money on people that don't belong here. And as somebody who moved here legally, right, that is what grinds my gears the most. These politicians are going against their oath of office. They swore an oath to the Constitution, and by all accounts, they're just breaking the law and they're getting away with it.
Right.
And it's infuriating to me. My kids can't afford to buy a house. That's not the American dream.
Right.
That's not the dream I lived. And it's unfortunate that the politicians have sold the American people down the road. That's
Now
how I do it.
you're definitely a warrior, right? And definitely a happy warrior. So let me ask you, like, what do you like the best about being in this space, in the political space? 'Cause you're obviously very passionate about it, but what makes you kind of excited and happy about it?
Just seeing all the people. Like, I used to go to nearly all the Trump rallies, finding like-minded friends. There's been a lot of people that I've met who were standing in line, and I tell them about, the precinct strategy, and they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And then because you're standing in line for hours, I bend their ear for the whole time I'm there. Getting people involved, giving somebody hope that there is something that we can do. Because back in 2020, at the end of 2020, when I reached out to the Mass GOP, I just felt so helpless. Like, there's got to be something I can do. And watching that War Room episode that day, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I went, "That's it. That's how we do this." So, and there's a lot of people getting involved.
So speaking of that, so taking it from 2021 to now, the 4 years or whatever, what changes have you seen especially in Massachusetts, whether it's the political climate or, what trends, I guess, do you see that are maybe, positive that people can get excited about and pick up on?
Well, I think, Western Mass especially, people are awake. People have woken up to the scam that's been, political theater for God knows how many years. When Trump got in there, the whole fake news. I used to watch that in the morning. Believe it or not, I used to watch The View. And they've gone completely batshit crazy now. But Western Mass especially, a lot of people are waking up. We hold a lot of fundraisers and stuff out in the Hadley area. Chris Ryan does a lot with that. And we get hundreds and hundreds of people showing up. So it's exciting to see. 2028, I've got my eyes set on that to find more people to join the Mass GOP and run for that committee man and committee woman seat. We had a lot of funding from the rhinos against the MAGA people that ran the last time. And we've identified those people. And we'll be keeping our eye out for them because some of them are now running for office, higher office here in Mass as Republicans. So it's spreading the word,
Excellent.
The more people that like me, hate politics, hate politicians, the more of us regular people that get involved, we can turn this thing around.
I love it. That's beautiful. So that transitions us into the state committee woman work.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm pretty new to this as well. So maybe if you can just give an overview of how the state committee works, what your role is, what people should be doing,
Okay.
and the influence and strategic application of those roles.
Well, there aren't many MAGA people on the state committee. I'd say there's maybe 24. And there's 80 positions. So I believe 77 of those positions are filled. So we've got actually 3 open seats in the Mass GOP. We meet 4 times a year. Quite honestly, I'm not quite sure what the purpose is, because it appears that when we have these meetings, we come up with 1 or 2, maybe 3 resolutions, which is, this is the stand that the Mass GOP is taking on these certain issues. Other than that, I mean, I don't see the necessity, I guess, to have these resolutions because nobody ever hears about them. Right. They're just a political party. A lot of these people are consultants and they make money off of doing this, which I find disgusting. Honestly, what they're supposed to be doing is, like I said before, they're supposed to be engaging the communities in their district and building the RTCs. Mm-hmm. And not very many of them do that.
I understand. Yeah. That's too bad. I mean, that's why we need more people like yourself.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point of what I'm doing is just to try to educate, motivate, and inspire people to participate. Very simple,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So, I don't know if that's a mission statement or a tagline or what it is, but that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Right.
So let's talk about your future. And again, thank you for all the great work. What's your next step?
I'm going to be running for state rep in 2026.
In 26. And so when is just so specifically that's November of 2026? Is that when the election?
Correct. Depending on if I have another Republican running against me, because once Susanna Whips got into office, she changed to an independent, which was very convenient. And unless I have a challenger. If I have a challenger, then there'll be a preliminary in March, April, May time.
Okay.
And then go on to run against Susie Whips in November.
So, so she's, as of now, she's your competition, unless, someone else comes in. But,
Correct.
generally speaking, what separates you from her in terms of, bringing something to the table? Obviously, if she's unenrolled or, Democrat, I mean, that speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
But just kind of head to head, what do you bring to the party that that voters should know about?
Backbone and fight. Like that's with that, we don't have that here in Mass. There's very few people. Mark Lombardo, maybe just one of them. Justin Thieber is another one, that are state reps, that actually get up there and fight, and let the people know what's going on behind the scenes, in the state house. They're a big club and we're not invited. So, we need to get people in there that aren't going to pull a Susie Whips, run as a Republican, and then join sides with the other side, because we don't have enough Republicans there, that will stand up for the people. It's, like I said, there's only like maybe less than a handful of them that actually are in there fighting, and they need help.
Right.
Quite frankly, they need help. I'm not going to go there to make friends. I don't have many friends.
You have one. You have one new one.
Well, there we go. I have acquaintances.
Nice.
But it's, I've always been a fighter in my life. I've always stood up for the little guy. And I see that what I'm doing now is because I've looked for somebody like that, since I got in the fight. I've looked around me for somebody to run. Please, somebody run. We need somebody that's, going to go in there and fight for the people out here. And I just never found one. We had one candidate before that I got behind, but his whole spiel was, I'm the one that's going to go and shake hands with the other side. I'll get along with them. I don't want to go along to get along. That's all we've ever gotten, is people that go along to get along.
Right.
We need a fighter in that.
Gotcha. Thank you. So a few more things and then we'll wrap up. First of all, thank you for your service and everything that you're doing. One demographic that I think is really important is Gen Z. I was part of the Trump campaign and I'm advisor for the Babson Republican Club, which now has, I believe, about 60 members, believe it or not.
Nice.
So that demo, let's just call it 18 to 25, depending on who you ask. What advice would you give to those individuals to get involved? Because that's, we go to a lot of RCC meetings, certain demographic, age-wise, and so on and so forth. What suggestions would you give to that particular group?
Get in the fight. There's loads of them. We have a great state committeeman from Natick, Nikki Maselli, who went viral in Boston. I'm not sure if you saw that or not.
I did, yes.
And he's a state committeeman, and he's doing great work. And, a lot of his friends, a lot of his peers are just like him. So there are a lot of them out there. You've just got to, pick your head up above that pulpit, so to speak, and get involved. Gotcha. Get involved. Fight back for your country, because, I moved away from socialist England because I didn't like socialism. And I have a lot of Americans that tell me, oh, England's not a socialist country. And I say, it is. It most definitely is. My first red flag was Obamacare. Yeah. I lost my grandparents at early ages because we had socialized medicine in England and it sucked. And I don't want that for myself, and I don't want that for my kids. That's going to be one of my fights when I get to Beacon Hill, because I'm going through a problem with my insurance right now because of Obamacare. Right. I'd like to get one of those Christian sharing insurance plans, because my husband and I are very healthy and we barely ever go to the doctors, and I shouldn't have to be paying over $200 a week for insurance that we don't use.
Wow.
And that doesn't cover anything. And I'm really angry that I don't have the choice to go to a different insurance plan because we have Obamacare here. You're
Yeah.
not allowed to do it in Mass.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just crazy. But yeah, so awesome. A couple of last points I have to ask. There's a beautiful image behind you. That's you.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little background on the chainsaw designation, if you will?
Sure. So I've always been an artist. You can see my work on Instagram, Chainsaw Sue. I do all kinds of art. And my ex-husband and I had an outdoor wood stove that we had to fill. So I had to learn to use a chainsaw. And I thought, I've seen these people at fairs making bears and stuff. And so I decided to give it a try one day. That was, 18 years ago. And I made a bear and it sold for $250 and I was hooked.
Nice.
So I actually did it professionally all around the world in competition for 15 years until I had to have a surgery 3 years ago on my hand, and the surgery was botched, and now I have permanent nerve damage.
Oh.
But that's okay. On to bigger and better things, what I'm doing now.
Yeah, great, great, great. So one last question. Again, thanks for everything. Because I'm a former professor, I like to give some homework. What homework would you assign anybody listening that they could do almost like the next day? Again, this is going to drop early May. What would you suggest anybody do that literally anybody can jump in at this point?
Well, if you're from anywhere but Massachusetts, go to the precinctstrategy.com, reach out to Dan, let him know what state you're in, and he'll put you in touch with the person leading it in that state. If you're in Massachusetts, just shoot me an email. It's chainsawsue@protonmail.com, and I'll help you get involved. I'll find out if you have an RTC. If you don't have an RTC, I'll point you in the direction and starting it. But that's what we need. We need to build that base up. See, the other thing that's important with the RTCs is that at the convention, the Mass State Convention, which will be in the spring, that is where we get to choose who's going to be running for the larger offices in the state, governor, secretary of state, that kind of thing. It's the members of the RTCs that actually attend that and actually vote. So it's very important that people get on board with the precinct strategy. Start your RTC before the deadline in December. If you start it after December, you won't allow to go and vote in the convention.
Perfect.
So the more numbers of MAGA people that we have at the convention, the better off we'll be with a governor of our liking instead of the Mass GOP's liking. And the people they're pushing right now, I'm telling you, the MAGA base does not like them.
Terrific. Sue, thank you so much for your time and everything that you're doing. And I wish you the best going forward.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Special thanks to Chainsaw Sue O'Sullivan for a great interview. You can get in touch with her if you need help setting up RTCs and RCCs throughout the Commonwealth. Keep in mind, the Mass MAGA community, the objective is to educate, motivate, and encourage people to participate. If you have information that you feel would be relevant, send an email to info@massmaga.com or send it through the massmaga.com website, and I'll post it immediately. Thank you so much, and enjoy your day, and let's keep Massachusetts great and make it great again as well. Thank you.